Welcome to the Deep Dive Wisdom for your day. Sit back and get ready for some knowledge from real people with life lessons you can apply to your journey today. Um, Imagine surviving two separate kidnapping attempts as a young child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, only to grow up and discover that the most dangerous, terrifying place you inhabit isn't, the unpredictable streets of the outside world. It's
hmm
actually your own mind. I mean, we spend so much of our lives trying to control everything around us, right?
Oh, absolutely. Locking doors, bracing for impact.
Exactly. When the real threat to our peace is the legacy code running silently in our own heads.
It is the ultimate paradox of human survival.
Hmm.
I mean, we are biologically wired to scan the horizon for tigers, but for most of us living today, the tiger isn't out there.
Right. There's no actual tiger in the living room.
No, the tiger is a deeply ingrained limiting belief, or, a childhood wound that was just never cleaned out,
Hmm.
or this desperate need for someone, anyone, to tell us we are enough.
Yeah, which is so hard to spot.
Right, because unlike a broken bone, which is binary, you take an x-ray, you see the jagged line, you put a cast on it. You cannot take an x-ray of an emotional void.
That's a great point.
You can't just put a splint on a fractured sense of self-worth.
Which is exactly why we are going there today. The mission for this deep dive is to explore the incredibly raw, genuinely moving life story of personal coach Anel Valenzuela as she shared it in a vulnerable conversation with Álvaro Martínez.
Such a powerful story.
It really is. We are going to trace a narrative arc together, and it is a steep one for you listening. We are moving from profound childhood trauma, severe bullying, and the desperate search for external validation.
All the way to a fiercely powerful destination of inner peace.
Right? Inner peace, self-worth, and radical self-love.
And we are not just going to talk about these concepts in, vague self-help platitudes either.
No, definitely not.
The source material we are pulling from today forces us to look at the actual mechanics of transformation. We're going to examine the psychology of overcoming limiting cultural beliefs, the neurological reality of surviving trauma.
And, crucially, the very specific, actionable daily rituals that forge a champion of change.
Yeah, the actual day-to-day habits.
So here are the stakes for you listening right now. Whether you are a student, a beginner taking your very first tentative steps on the path of personal development, or someone who has been trying for years to peel back your own emotional masks without success.
This is for you.
Exactly. This deep dive is going to equip you with the toolkit. We're going to break down the daily habits, the mindset shifts, and the psychological frameworks you need to stop running from your past and start managing your internal world.
I love that.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the absolute foundation, the soil where this entire story begins.
Right, her origins.
Yeah, Anel's origins. So she was born in Colima, Mexico, and she wasn't just born into a quiet nuclear family. She was the 12th of 14 children.
Which is just, think about the sheer logistics of that for a moment.
It's mind-boggling.
10 girls, 4 boys. 14 different personalities, 14 different nervous systems, all developing under one roof.
In a humble family of merchants selling clothes, no less.
Right. The economic and, frankly, the emotional bandwidth required just to keep the lights on and food on the table in that environment is staggering.
It really is, but what stands out immediately in the sources isn't just the size of the family. It's the intense, conflicting ideological soil she was planted in.
Oh, the clash of beliefs.
Exactly. Specifically regarding education, you have these two massive, diametrically opposed pillars. On one side, you have her mother.
A woman who couldn't read or write.
Right. Yet she fiercely, relentlessly advocated for her children's education.
Yeah.
And on the exact opposite side, you have her father. He held the belief that educating women was, well, to put it bluntly, a complete waste of time and resources.
Because of his worldview.
Right. His rationale was that they just get married, meaning they leave the house and offer him no return on his investment.
What's fascinating here is the psychology of limiting cultural beliefs. When we hear that story today, through our modern progressive lens, the immediate reaction is to label the father as a villain.
Oh, for sure. Sounds terrible.
We want to say, what a cruel, misogynistic thing to impose on your daughters.
Yeah.
But if we want to actually understand how limiting beliefs are formed and passed down, we have to analyze the cultural and economic ecosystem he was operating in.
Right. The context matters.
Exactly. This wasn't necessarily born of malice. It was an inherited mask of his own era.
Right. Because he was a merchant. His entire worldview was built around literal commerce.
Yeah, he viewed the world through a ledger of investments and returns because his survival depended on it. In a survival-based economy with 14 mouths to feed, Every single peso matters.
It's all just math to him.
Exactly. To him, sending a daughter to school when the overwhelming societal expectation was that her ultimate role was solely domestic, it just felt like a bad economic equation.
Oh.
He was running the software of his time, deeply ingrained in a patriarchal, survivalist worldview. He couldn't see the intrinsic value of her mind because his culture had literally blinded him to it.
And the contrast with the mother is just brilliant because the mother couldn't read. She lacked the very thing she was fighting for.
Yeah, which is incredible.
But instead of saying, well, this is just how it is for women in our family, she used her deficit as a catalyst. She passed on the value of education precisely because she lacked it.
She felt the pain of that absence.
Exactly. She knew the vulnerability, the deep disadvantage of not being able to read a contract or a sign or a book. She rebelled by becoming the pillar, insisting the kids go to school. She even organized the family so the older siblings sent money back home to fund the education of the younger ones.
Which introduces a vital concept for anyone listening who feels constrained by their background. We often think of our family of origin as a destiny.
Right, like we're stuck with it.
But it is actually just a starting point.
Yeah.
It is the raw material. And sometimes, the most profound gifts our parents give us aren't the things they provide, but the glaring absences they leave behind.
Because it forces us to act.
Yes, it forces us to go out and find those things for ourselves.
In the sources, Álvaro brings up this analogy that I just can't stop thinking about. He talks about plants and trees.
Oh, the resistance analogy.
Yeah, if you think about a seed, a plant actually needs the heavy, dark resistance and the suffocating pressure of the dirt to grow strong roots.
And that's push against something.
Right, and a tree literally has to fight the invisible, constant gravity of the earth in order to push upward and reach the sun.
It's a struggle by design.
If you just leave a seed on a flat, perfectly safe kitchen countertop and give it a little water, it might sprout, but it doesn't grow deep roots. It has nothing to anchor it.
No tension at all.
Exactly. So it makes me wonder, how do the cultural pressures we are buried under, like Anel being buried under the dirt of her father's limiting beliefs, how do they actually become the exact resistance we need to grow?
That is the core mechanism of resilience. And you see it perfectly illustrated in Anel's initial psychological drive.
Yeah.
Early on, as a young girl and a young woman, she wasn't studying out of some pure, enlightened love for academia.
No, not at all.
She was being driven by a wounded inner child. She was studying to spite her father.
Just purely to prove him wrong.
Yes, to hold up a certificate and say, look, I am worth the investment. Education does matter. I am not a bad equation. The dirt she was pushing against was his doubt.
So she used his limitation, his blindness, as her absolute rocket fuel.
She did. And spite is an incredibly powerful, highly combustible fuel. It will get you off the launch pad. But, and this is where so many people get stuck in their personal development journey, the resistance of the dirt gets you out of the ground, but it cannot be the thing that sustains you once you reach the sun.
Because if you run on spite forever, you just burn out your own engine.
Precisely. From a neurological standpoint, spite and anger run on cortisol and adrenaline. It's a stress response.
Which is toxic over time.
Very. You can't live in a chronic stress response for decades without destroying your immune system and your emotional well-being. Eventually, Anel had to realize that studying just to prove a point to a father who couldn't see her value was still, fundamentally, a form of letting him control her path.
Wow, she was still reacting to him.
She was reacting to the dirt, rather than reaching for the light for her own sake. If she didn't recognize that pattern, she would have spent her entire life collecting degrees and certificates she never actually cared about, just trying to win an argument with a ghost from her childhood.
Which is such a massive realization because while the dirt provides the resistance for growth, we have to look at the environment she was growing in. If you are the 12th of 14 plants all shoved into the exact same pot, inevitably, there is going to be a desperate, frantic fight for sunlight.
A fight for resources.
Right. Or, in the case of a developing child, a desperate fight for attention.
The mathematical reality of a household with 14 children is that parental attention is stretched to the point of transparency. Anel notes in the interview with a lot of grace that her parents did the absolute best they could with the resources and awareness they had.
Of course.
But a child's developing brain doesn't care about adult logistics. A child's emotional needs don't calculate that mom and dad are exhausted from selling clothes all day.
The kid just knows what they feel.
Right. A child just knows an inherent biological hunger for love, for validation, for a parent to look at them, focus entirely on them and say, I see you and you are safe.
And when a child is deprived of that deeply focused love and foundational safety at home, the hunger doesn't just evaporate, it metastasizes.
They go looking for it.
Exactly. They seek validation anywhere they can find it, and often that leads a vulnerable child into incredibly dangerous external places. This is where the story gets really heavy, because Anel's youth was marked by a level of vulnerability that is just staggering. The sources reveal compounding traumas. As a very young child, she faced two separate near-kidnapping attempts.
Let's just pause and look at what that does to a developing nervous system.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
When a home environment feels overcrowded and emotionally sparse, the child naturally feels a bit unanchored. But when the outside world literally tries to snatch you away twice, the message the brain receives is nowhere is safe.
Not inside, not outside.
Exactly. The amygdala, the fear center of the brain, becomes hyperactive. It gets stuck in the on position. The child begins to view every interaction, every environment, through a lens of potential threat.
It creates this terrifying snowball of insecurity. You are small, you are unseen at home, and the world is actively trying to harm you. And that snowball just keeps rolling and gaining mass.
It just builds and builds.
By the time she reaches the 6th grade, this complete lack of foundational safety culminates in a period of bullying. And we aren't talking about kids just being mean on the playground.
No, this was severe.
This was bullying so isolating and systematic that Anel actually had thoughts and took physical actions to end her own life. She was a 6th grader.
The sheer psychological weight of that is agonizing to even contemplate.
It really is. She survived this attempt, thankfully. But the tragedy compounds because she didn't just survive and feel relief. She returned home carrying a mountain of immense, crushing guilt.
Because of her upbringing.
Right, because the very values instilled in her by her mother, the deeply held religious teachings that her body was a temple of God, were now turned inward. They became a weapon of shame.
Oh, that is so painful.
She felt she had desecrated a holy temple. She felt like a failure on a spiritual level on top of everything else.
When a child cannot find safety, they adapt to survive. They begin to wear masks. They try to figure out what version of themselves will stop the pain. And one of the most vital psychological truths to understand about bullying, a truth that Anel realizes much later in her life through her coaching and development work, is that the intense, relentless cruelty of bullies is very rarely about the victim at all.
Wait, I need to push back on this right here, because I hear this a lot in psychology circles, and I understand it intellectually.
Sure.
But if I am a listener right now, and I am currently dealing with a toxic boss who humiliates me, or I'm remembering a bully who made my life a living hell, telling me it's just their internal chaos, feels like it excuses their abuse, doesn't that just let them off the hook?
That is a brilliant distinction to make, and it is crucial we separate the two. Understanding the mechanism of abuse is not the same as excusing the abuse.
Okay.
We are not saying the bully is blameless or that their actions are acceptable. What we are doing is removing the personalization of the attack, which is what actually destroys the victim's self-worth. When a bully is tormenting someone to the point of driving a 6th grader toward ending their life, that bully is projecting their own massive, unhandled internal agony onto a vulnerable target. They feel powerless somewhere in their own life, so they extract power from someone smaller.
So they're basically using the victim as an emotional punching bag to regulate their own dysregulated nervous system.
Exactly. And the reason you need to understand this is for your own emotional liberation. If you believe the bully is right, if you believe you are being targeted because you are inherently flawed, ugly, stupid, or worthless, you internalize the abuse.
You make it your identity.
Yes. But if you recognize that the bully is actually just vomiting their own trauma onto you, it allows you to step back and say, this behavior is horrific and I will set a boundary against it, but this is not about my worth. This is about their sickness. It doesn't excuse them, but it protects you.
That makes total sense. It shifts the center of gravity. But how often do we do this in our adult lives without even realizing it?
All the time.
I want to challenge you listening right now to look at your own reactions. How often do we blame the barking dog or the noisy neighbor or the guy who cut us off in traffic for our explosive, intense irritation when it's really these deeply unhealed childhood wounds reacting?
Oh, constantly.
We think we are furious about a poorly worded email from a coworker, but we are actually just reacting from the place of a terrified inner 6-year-old who feels completely out of control and unsafe.
It happens every single day, in boardrooms, in marriages, in traffic jams. Those unhealed childhood traumas absolutely dictate our adult behavior if left unexamined. The brain is an association machine.
What do you mean by that?
Let's say you have an adult who completely shuts down, hides, or runs away at the slightest hint of conflict during a team meeting. To the outside observer, it looks like a disproportionate, confusing reaction to a minor disagreement over a spreadsheet.
Right, they look at you and think, why are you panicking? It's just a budget meeting.
Exactly. But internally, that adult isn't reacting to the spreadsheet. Someone's tone of voice or the sudden tension in the room acted as a trigger. It instantly activated the amygdala, sending a signal that said, this is just like when you were bullied. This is just like when you were unsafe.
It's an emotional flashback.
Yes, the rational prefrontal cortex goes offline, and the terrified 6-year-old inside them literally hijacks the nervous system. The adult is pulling all the levers, trying to escape a perceived danger that is actually echoing from decades ago.
And you see this dynamic, this desperate attempt to soothe the terrified inner child play out in Anel's early adult choices. She mentions in the interview getting a cosmetology certificate. Now, on paper, if you're looking at a resume, that looks like a great proactive career move.
Very practical.
But she's remarkably honest about the true motivation behind it. She reveals she didn't do it out of some deep, abiding passion for the craft of cosmetology. She did it entirely out of low self-esteem.
She was still operating from the deficit created in her childhood.
Exactly. She was constantly feeling not enough, so she sought an external solution. She thought, if I can make other people look beautiful, if I can get this piece of paper that says I have a skill, maybe then I will have worth. Maybe then people will look at me.
She was trying to buy value.
It was an external Band-Aid for an internal gaping wound.
And this is a trap so many people fall into. We try to solve internal emotional voids with external achievements. We think, if I get the promotion, if I buy the house, if I lose the weight, then I will finally feel safe and worthy.
But it never works.
Never. The external world can never permanently fill an internal void. The shift from seeking external validation to building internal self-assurance is the crux of Anel's entire journey. But you don't make that shift in the darkness alone. When you are buried that deep in the dirt, you usually need a spark to help you see which way is up.
Which brings us to the singular ray of light that pulled Anel back from the absolute brink during that horrific 6th grade year. It was the intervention of mentors. Now, after the bullying and after the attempt on her own life, Anel didn't suddenly sit up and achieve spiritual enlightenment. A 6th grader does not have the cognitive development to process massive trauma and extract grand philosophical life lessons in the immediate aftermath.
No, of course not.
But she did learn one incredibly crucial survival skill, the most important skill of all. She learned to open her mouth and ask for help.
She confided in her older brother, Jose.
Yes. Now, she didn't tell him everything. She didn't reveal the attempt on her life. She carried that secret for a long time. But she told him when he was being severely bullied. And his reaction is so telling of the environment and the era they lived in.
What did he do?
He didn't sit her down and validate her feelings with therapy speak. He actively prepared her to fight back physically. He taught her how to throw a punch. He got her ready for a brawl.
Which is fascinating because, as she later realized, the physical fight wasn't actually the point at all. The physical altercation wasn't what saved her.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The courage didn't actually come from her brother teaching her the mechanics of a punch. The courage was already inside Anel all along.
Wow.
The sheer act of being heard by her brother, of speaking her pain aloud, out of the darkness, and having someone validate it, having a stronger, older figure say, I hear you, I am in your corner, and we're going to face this threat together, that is what gave Anel her courage back.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
The mentor didn't hand her a cup of courage. The mentor just provided the mirror for her to see the courage she already possessed.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this beautifully illustrates the profound role of mentors in fostering personal growth throughout our entire lives. Life doesn't just give you one mentor, it gives you a series of them at different stages, precisely when you need their specific type of mirror.
They show up when you're ready.
Exactly. And Nell considers her parents her very first mentors, despite the limitations we discussed. Her mom instilled perseverance and core values, establishing the discipline of going to Mass, which created a routine of reflection. Then her siblings, like Jose, mirrored her courage when she was under attack. Later in life, it was her husband who provided a safe harbor. And she specifically mentions high school teachers who looked at her and believed in her academic potential when her internal belief was at absolute zero.
It is so vital for students or beginners who are just starting out on their self-discovery journey to truly hear this. Sometimes you simply do not have the internal battery power to believe in yourself.
It's just drained.
The battery is completely dead, and that is okay. In those moments, you do not have to conjure belief out of thin air. You have to borrow it.
Yes, borrow it.
You borrow belief from a mentor. You borrow their faith in you until you can generate your own charge. You borrow their courage to draw a line in the sand and set boundaries.
Setting boundaries is arguably the very first active step of self-love. A boundary is simply a statement that says, from here to here, you are not allowed to cross. This is my emotional property line.
I love that phrase, emotional property line.
But to draw that line, you have to believe you possess something worth protecting. If you've been bullied, if your confidence has been systematically stolen from you, you don't feel worth protecting. A mentor standing beside you, validating your worth, is often the scaffolding you need to draw that line for the first time.
And this realization that the power to draw the line, the courage to fight back emotionally, was actually internal all along. This is the spark that ignites the broader, massive discussion Anel brings to us about the two worlds we inhabit.
The internal world versus the external world. This is perhaps the most profound realization in all of personal development, and it's where the real work begins.
It's the core of it all.
We spend the vast majority of our lives exhausting ourselves trying to control external factors. We act as the police of the outside world. We try to control what our coworkers think of us, how the traffic moves, what the economy does, how our family members behave at Thanksgiving, what strangers think of our clothes. And it is completely, utterly impossible.
It's worse than exhausting. It's a guaranteed recipe for misery. You are trying to control the weather.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It leads to total burnout, chronic anxiety, and a deep sense of helplessness. True success, true enduring peace, only comes from managing the one domain you actually have jurisdiction over, your internal emotions and thoughts.
Okay, let's unpack this with a way to visualize it, because moving from the external to the internal can feel very abstract for a lot of people. Think about your childhood conditioning, your limiting beliefs, like being gifted a fully furnished house by your parents.
Oh, furnished house, yeah.
When you were a young kid, this is great. The house keeps you safe from the rain. The furniture gives you a place to sit. It's highly functional. It serves a purpose for survival.
Right, you need it.
But then you grow up. You become an adult. You look around this house in your mind and you realize, you know what? I absolutely hate this sofa. This wallpaper is incredibly depressing. This floor plan makes no sense. I don't like this decor at all.
Because the decor represents the beliefs and behavioral patterns you inherited.
Yeah.
The belief that women should be educated, or the core wound that you are not enough, or the coping mechanism of running away from conflict. That's the ugly, outdated, inherited furniture.
Exactly.
Or, to put it in a more modern context, it's like trying to run legacy code on a brand new operating system.
Oh, I love that. Tell me more about the legacy code.
Think about it. The code, the belief system, was written for a very specific machine that existed 20 or 30 years ago. It was written for a vulnerable child in a specific household dealing with specific threats. It was designed to keep that child safe.
Right.
But you are no longer that child, and you are no longer in that environment. You are a modern adult operating system. When you try to run that old legacy code today, when you use a 6-year-old's coping mechanism to deal with a 35-year-old's marital conflict, the system crashes.
You get a blue screen of death.
You get a blue screen of death. That crash manifests as anxiety, panic attacks, depression, or explosive anger.
That makes so much sense. Adulthood, true, conscious adulthood, is the active, intentional process of going into the system, identifying the legacy code, and rewriting it. It's saying, I appreciate that this sofa gave me a place to sit when I was 6. I appreciate that this code kept me safe when I was bullied, but it is causing my system to crash now, and I am uninstalling it.
And that process of rewriting the code, of removing the furniture, is what people often refer to as unmasking or peeling back layers. You have to peel away these protective layers to find your genuine, authentic self at the core.
It's like peeling an onion.
Yes. But as Anel insists in the sources, and this is a reality check for anyone starting this path, rewriting the code is not a spa day. It is a deeply uncomfortable, sometimes agonizing process.
Yeah, it's not fun.
It requires confronting the dark, hidden, repressed parts of ourselves that we have spent decades trying to ignore.
Which is exactly why she strongly advocates for professional psychological help or coaching. You wouldn't try to rewrite the core operating system of your computer without a manual. And you shouldn't try to move heavy emotional furniture by yourself. You can throw your back out, psychologically speaking.
Precisely. Because if we don't do this conscious internal work with proper guidance, we end up unconsciously adopting the very negative family patterns we swore we would avoid. This is the tragedy I see constantly.
Give me an example of that.
Let's say a child grows up with a severely alcoholic parent. They see the destruction, the chaos, the pain. They promise themselves, I will never, ever be a drunkard. And they keep that promise. They never touch a drop of alcohol in their lives.
Okay, sounds like a win.
But because they never went to therapy, because they never addressed the root pain, the anxiety, and the terrifying lack of control they felt as a child, they simply adopt other toxic traits to manage the unhealed wound. They become a clinical workaholic, neglecting their own family. Or they become incredibly emotionally unavailable. Or they turn into a raging perfectionist who alienates everyone around them.
Wow. So they threw out the ugly sofa, but they went to the exact same store and bought an equally ugly chair to replace it?
Exactly. They changed the external symptom, but they kept the internal disease. Transformation does not happen in the comfort zone. It does not happen just because you decide to be better. It begins exclusively in the uncomfortable zones.
It begins when you finally look at it.
It begins when you sit in the empty room of your mind without distractions and finally ask, why am I reacting this way? Why is my chest tight right now? What is this anger actually protecting?
So if we know we have to do this internal work, if we know we have to rewrite the legacy code and sit in the discomfort, the practical question for the listener is, how do we actually execute that on a random Tuesday morning? How do we build the mechanics, the literal architecture of self-commitment?
This requires building an architecture of consistency. Both Anel and Álvaro share what they consider the ultimate foundational secret for beginners wanting to start a personal development path. It's incredibly simple to articulate and incredibly difficult to execute consistently.
What is it?
Fulfill the promises you make to yourself.
This brings up what I think is the most relatable, brilliant analogy from the entire interview. The 2 a.m. airport ride. I want you listening to really think about this scenario. If your absolute best friend calls you and asks for a ride to the airport at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday because they have a family emergency, what do?
You go.
You say yes. You set 2 different alarms on your phone. You lay out your jacket by the door. You prep the coffee machine the night before. And when that alarm goes off in the pitch black, you don't even think about it. You get out of your warm bed, you get in the car, and you show up for your friends.
Without hesitation.
Yeah.
You honor the commitment.
But when we promise ourselves that we are going to wake up at 5 a.m. to go for a run or to sit and meditate or to finally work on that business plan we've been talking about, the alarm goes off and what do? We smash the snooze button.
We roll over.
We roll over, we go back to sleep, we betray ourselves. Why on earth do we treat our friends, our bosses, even casual acquaintances with a higher standard of loyalty and respect than we treat ourselves?
This raises a profoundly important question about the neurology of self-trust. Every single time you hit snooze on a promise you made to yourself, you are not just getting an extra 10 minutes of sleep. You are actively fracturing your own self-trust.
Because your brain is keeping score.
The brain is watching everything you do. You are sending a subconscious neurological message to your brain that your words do not matter. And when your brain learns, through repeated behavioral evidence, that you do not follow through on your own commitments, it reinforces the deeply rooted childhood lie that you are a little thing, that you are not enough, that your goals aren't important enough to honor.
So, what does this all mean? It means the path to massive sweeping life change isn't about making a giant New Year's resolution or a sweeping declaration on social media. It's about the unglamorous act of keeping a micro promise to yourself today.
It's about building internal infrastructure. Álvaro shares a fantastic personal story about this exact mechanism in the sources.
Right.
For his entire early life, he was bound by his father's mandate to have what he called a sailor haircut.
Right. The haircut story.
Short, clean-shaved, perfectly presentable. To his father, this haircut meant discipline and respectability. But to Álvaro, it felt like conforming to a life someone else designed for him. It was a physical manifestation of a limiting belief imposed from the outside.
He was literally wearing his father's mask on his own head.
Precisely. It was a daily reminder of his lack of autonomy. So to break free from that legacy code, Álvaro had to start making and keeping promises to himself that aligned with his true, authentic identity. He started small.
What did he do?
He started growing his hair long, enduring the awkward phases and the potential disapproval. He started a podcast. He found the courage to step in front of a camera, to speak with his hands, to embrace his own eccentricities and image.
I love that.
By keeping those micro promises to himself, the promise to let his hair grow, the promise to hit record even when he was nervous. He actively stopped living the life others wanted for him.
He built the internal infrastructure to handle the discomfort of defying expectations. And that brings us to the actual physical blueprint of this infrastructure. Because Anel doesn't just talk in high-level theories. She has a highly practical, step-by-step breakdown of her daily rituals.
Yes, the daily routines.
If you want to know how to build self-trust, if you want to know how to rewrite the code, this is the toolkit. Let's look at her morning and evening habits for mental clarity and emotional growth.
Her morning routine is entirely sacred to her. She dedicates 1 full hour, right at the start of the day, strictly for herself, before anyone needs anything from her, before the world intrudes. And the sensory, physiological details of this routine are deeply important.
What'd she do first?
She starts with a glass of warm water and a few drops of lemon. Now, this isn't just about hydration. It is a grounding physical action. It signals to the body and the autonomic nervous system that a transition is happening from sleep to wakefulness, gently.
Then she moves into prayer, followed by 15 to 20 minutes of meditation. And finally, and I absolutely love this part, she steps outside to physically absorb the first rays of the morning sun on her skin.
Using daily rituals and meditations specifically for emotional healing is very different from using them for productivity. In corporate culture, you often hear about meditation as a tool to hack your brain.
Right, to optimize your focus so you can stare at a screen for 12 hours straight.
Exactly. But Anel uses meditation to create silence. The brain operates heavily on the default mode network, which is the part of the brain that ruminates, worries about the future, and dwells on the past.
It's the anxiety engine.
Yes. When you sit in true silence for 15 minutes, you give the brain a break. And more importantly, the repressed emotions, the sadness, the fear of the inner child that you've been pushing down with busyness, they finally bubble up to the surface. The silence gives them permission to be felt, acknowledged, and subsequently released.
And the sunlight. From a biological perspective, getting early morning sunlight in your eyes and on your skin halts the production of melatonin and triggers a healthy spike of cortisol to wake you up properly, which sets your circadian rhythm for the entire day.
It's vital for physical health.
But emotionally, that physical connection to the earth, feeling the warmth of the sun, it's a visceral reminder that you exist in a vast, beautiful universe, and you are inherently worthy of taking up space in it. Now, her evening routine is just as strict, if not more so.
Oh, the evening boundary is incredible.
Yeah. She has a hard boundary? Absolutely no social media after 8 p.m. She calls this protecting her mind to nourish her dreams. She refuses to let anything scary, stressful, or toxic enter her subconscious right before she goes to sleep.
This raises an important question. How much of our daily chronic anxiety is simply a result of not putting a gatekeeper at our mind's door?
Probably most of it.
Think about modern life.
Yeah.
We leave the front door of our mind wide open, 247. We let the hyperpolarized news cycle, angry social media comments, comparison culture, and violent imagery just walk right into our living room, muddy up the carpet, and scream at us while we're trying to wind down.
It's total madness.
Anel's 8 p.m. boundary is a profound act of self-love. She is saying, my internal peace is significantly more important than my curiosity about a timeline.
And instead of doom scrolling and exposing her brain to blue light and stress hormones, she listens to instrumental music, specifically pieces by an artist named Abo City.
I'll say yes.
She praises the rhythm, the frequency, and the emotional resonance of the composition, noting how it guides the brain into a state of flow and calm without the distraction of lyrics. She even introduced her daughters to it so they could grow up with this calming, nourishing frequency as their baseline, rather than the frantic noise of television.
That is such a gift to give her kids.
I just marvel at the absolute simplicity of these habits. You listening right now, you do not need a massive, expensive, complicated overhaul of your life. You don't need to fly to a retreat on a mountaintop. You just need a glass of warm water, 15 minutes of silence, and a strict boundary on your phone at 8 p.m.
Simple? Yes. But requiring an intense commitment to that 2 a.m. airport level of self-trust. And beyond these daily physiological habits, Anel relies on a library of wisdom to guide her internal world.
She has a toolkit of frameworks.
When she encounters resistance, she has curated these resources to help her manage it.
Let's open that toolkit because the sources provide some phenomenal reading recommendations. She specifically recommends 3 seminal books for finding meaning and letting go of resistance. First, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
An absolute classic.
She credits this book with fundamentally teaching her to live in the present hour, to stop agonizing over the past traumas or panicking about future hypotheticals.
Eckhart Tolle's work is essential because it addresses the time-traveling nature of the human mind. The mind is constantly pulling us backward into regret or projecting us forward into anxiety.
We're rarely just right here.
Tolle teaches that the only place life actually exists is in the current, immediate moment. By learning to anchor yourself in the now, you starve the anxiety of its fuel, because anxiety requires a future to worry about.
That is so powerful. The second book she leans on heavily is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl was a psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor.
Yes, his story is incredible.
He observed in the most horrific, stripped-down, agonizing circumstances imaginable in the concentration camps that humans retain one ultimate, untouchable freedom.
The gap between stimulus and response.
Exactly. The ability to choose your response to your circumstances. They can take your family, your clothes, your health, but they cannot take how you choose to react in your own mind.
Anel uses this philosophy known as logotherapy to remind herself that while she absolutely couldn't choose being bullied and she couldn't choose the limiting conditions of her childhood, she has total, absolute power in choosing how she responds to those memories today. She can choose meaning over victimhood.
And the third book in her toolkit is Letting Go by David Hawkins. This is all about releasing resistance to what doesn't serve you. Going back to our earlier analogy, it's the step-by-step manual for how to physically and emotionally drag the ugly sofa out the window.
I love that.
It teaches the mechanism of feeling an emotion fully without fighting it, so that the energy of it can finally dissipate.
It is a phenomenal triad of resources. And what's interesting is that she doesn't just rely on ancient wisdom or classic 20th century psychology. She is highly adaptable and uses modern tools as well.
Yeah, she talks about AI.
She openly discusses using artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT, as part of her creative process. She uses it to brainstorm, to overcome creative blocks when she is writing or developing coaching materials.
But with a huge critical caveat. She makes it explicitly clear that you cannot just hand over your voice to a robot. You use it to spark the ideas that are stuck in your head, to organize your chaotic thoughts, but you have to maintain the human essence.
That just sound like you.
You have to take absolute responsibility for the final product, editing it, shaping it so it contains your soul, your lived experience, your flavor.
It's a tool, not a replacement for the self. Just like the mentor is a mirror, not the source of courage. And speaking of the self, we have to talk about her most powerful, resonant technique for emotional growth, which ties this entire narrative together.
Reconnecting with the inner child.
Yes. Think back to that young girl in the 6th grade. Anel coped with the intense, suffocating pain of bullying by writing. She would sit alone and write down all her agonizing emotions, writing furious, sad letters to the bullies that she never actually sent. It was her only outlet to process the trauma.
And today, how does the empowered adult Anel comfort that terrified little girl who wrote those unsent letters? She does something so physical and beautiful.
It is so touching.
She physically stands in front of a mirror and looks at herself. She wraps her arms around her own shoulders in a genuine tight hug, and she speaks directly to her reflection. She says aloud, "You can do it. You are valuable. You are beautiful."
She is directly, intentionally counteracting the old inherited legacy code of "I am not enough."
Yes, she is finally giving that little girl the focus, attention, the safety, and the validation that she desperately searched for outside the house and in the hands of bullies all those years ago. She is reparenting herself.
It is the ultimate taking of responsibility. The source is mentioned in another classic book, The Four Agreements. And one of its core tenets is taking absolute responsibility for your own reality. You cannot blame your partner for your unhappiness today. You cannot blame your children for your stress.
You can't even blame your past.
You cannot even blame your past bullies or the father who didn't value your education for your current lack of growth. They provided the dirt, yes. But you are the seed. You are the one who has to choose to push through it. No one is coming to save you, which sounds terrifying until you realize it means you have the power to save yourself.
That is the complete arc of the champion. We've traced Anel Valenzuela's journey from a frightened 6th grader, nearly crushed by the weight of her environment and her unhealed wounds, to a woman who creates her own light, fiercely sets her boundaries, and guides others to do the exact same thing.
It's an amazing transformation.
She learned through fire that turning around and giving light to our own dark, uncomfortable, repressed parts is the ultimate, most radical act of self-love a human being can perform.
It truly is. She stopped running from the pain of her past, which is what most of us spend our lives doing. And instead, she started running toward the peace of her future. She stopped trying to police the uncontrollable external world, and she became the master of her internal one.
Which leaves us with something I really want you to mull over as you step away from this deep dive and go about your day. We've talked a lot about that plant pushing against the heavy dirt to grow.
The resistance.
If a plant literally requires the heavy, dark, suffocating resistance of the dirt in order to grow strong roots and reach the sun, well, what if your current anxiety, what if the intense struggle you are facing at work, or the conflict in your relationship, or the heavy resistance in your own mind right now isn't a sign that you are failing?
What if it's the dirt?
What if it is the exact, specific resistance your roots need to finally break ground? What if the mask you're wearing right now isn't protecting you from the world at all, but is actually hiding the very genuine, beautiful thing the world desperately needs to see?
The resistance isn't in the way of the path. The resistance is the path.
You too can apply the life lessons to your life today. Become a champion of change and be the change you want to see. This has been the Deep Dive Wisdom for your day. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. For more, visit us on YouTube by the same name.
Step into the architecture of your soul. This is the shared wisdom of Anel Valenzuela. Under a roof of dust, we leaned on one another, a mother who couldn't read, but wrote our dreams in gold. Two kidnapping shadows trying to steal my youth away. Insecurity rolling like a snowball day by day. And sixth grade bullying that made me wanna fade, crying in the shadows of the playground that we made. But I talked to my brother Jose, broke the silent cage. No more running from the ghosts of yesterday. I've swept the silent trauma and the fears away. With every written word, the light became so clear, reclaiming my voice, conquering the fear. We are peeling back the layers of the onion tonight, turning every quiet wound into a beacon of light. On wisdom for others find their way as a transformation code.